The Deshaun Watson saga has more or less come to a conclusion, as he will be serving an 11-game suspension and paying a $5 million fine. However, Watson was initially suspended for only 6 games without any fine. Would it be crazy if I told you that the NFL wanted a short suspension for Deshaun Watson? Because I think that's the truth. However, that's also a little misleading, as I believe the 11-game suspension and $5 million fine was closer to the league's truly intended punishment. But before I get to that point, here's a very quick recap of the Deshaun Watson saga. In March of 2021, 24 separate sexual assault lawsuits were filed against Watson, and after several months of media questions, with few, if any, answers, 2 grand juries in Texas declined to indict Watson on criminal charges. Watson has since reached settlements with 23 of the 24 women, and during this time, he was also traded to the Cleveland Browns, who he signed one of the largest contracts in NFL history with. The legal stuff aside, Watson was facing a suspension from playing football. However, there was a lot of debate over how long the suspension would be. The NFL Players Association didn't want any suspension for Watson, while NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke publicly about seeking a year-long suspension. Well, the NFL and NFLPA appointed disciplinary officer Sue L. Robinson to review the case and determine the necessary consequence for Watson. After much deliberation, Robinson essentially concluded that Watson did commit the sexual assaults, but only gave him a 6-game suspension. The league then appealed the suspension and then reached an agreement with the NFLPA to suspend Watson for 11 games and fine him for the $5 million. Okay, I hear the complaints already about how there's no way they wanted a short suspension for Watson because they were so active and persistent in ensuring a long suspension. Well, consider this. The NFL is extremely invested in optics, meaning they care how they are perceived. So, if they care so much about what people think of them, then they clearly wanted to be on the right side of this, which would support the potential victims, thereby punishing Watson to the highest degree. But it's one thing to say you want the right thing done, and another to actually do it yourself. So, they can say they want him suspended for a full year all they want. But if he was suspended for a short time frame, say 6 games, the NFL would have the opportunity to be the hero and increase the suspension. By slamming down a bigger punishment themselves, they look like they were doing the right thing. However, this theory doesn't end there, as there is another thing the NFL is extremely invested in, and that is their power. Do you remember earlier when I mentioned that Watson signed one of the biggest contracts ever after being traded? Well, part of the contract included a prophylactic measure by Watson in anticipation of a suspension. The deal was worth $230 million over 5 years, which averages to about $46 million per year. But if Watson were suspended for the whole season, he would lose everything he was set to make that year. So instead of losing $46 million, the contract was strategically constructed so that he would only be earning about $1 million this year, which would heavily minimize his losses. But the NFL saw this as a challenge of their power, and they were not going to lose. When they appealed the initial suspension, they took the ball and put it in their court. They seized the opportunity and tacked on a $5 million fine to his punishment. And while $5 million isn't quite the $46 million he could have made this year, it's considerably more than the $1 million he would have lost otherwise. So, to sum everything up, the NFL wanted a short suspension for Deshaun Watson so they would have the chance to increase the suspension and look like the good guys, while also adding a large fine to Watson's penalties to assert their power. Well, that's my NFL theory for today. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. Do you believe the NFL wanted Deshaun Watson to be given a short suspension? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time.